And way too many times I see brands that follow the methodology that keyword research tell them to do, and that is focus in on optimize on the top searched terms. Those are the ones that are most popular. Those are the ones that are most likely to deliver, sales for you. In concept, that works, but in execution, it doesn't, because ultimately each product and each brand is going to have a different resonance with their target audience. They're not going to convert as well. They're not going to get to click-through rate as well. They're not going to have their images and their title and their bullet points and everything dialed in to that creates, their offering of their product listing just doesn't quite hit their target audience as well as they think.
Welcome to Synapse Sessions, where we talk with experts who are changing the game in e-commerce. Today I'm joined by Brian Johnson of DeepM.ai, who's facilitated over $3.5 billion in Amazon sales across 18 years in e-commerce and 11 of those specifically on Amazon. Brian reveals why most ranking advice is too broad to work, how Amazon's A9 algorithm treats each product niche differently, and why focusing on search terms where you actually convert better than your competitors beats chasing high volume keywords every time. He breaks down the precision approach to ranking optimization, shares what conversion rate data you should be analyzing right now, and explains how machine learning is changing the game for sellers who want to outrank established competitors. If you're tired of generic ranking strategies that don't move the needle and ready to discover what actually drives results for your specific products, this conversation will show you exactly how to make that happen. Let's jump into the session. All right, Brian. Yeah, to jump right in, I've followed you in the Amazon space since I started about 8-9 years ago myself, and I know you've been in for probably 17. Yeah, it's been quite a journey, and yourself even much longer, probably twice that amount of time. I
Not too
remember
bad. I mean,
watching some of.
Amazon. Yeah, this is my 11th year in the Amazon space, but yeah,
Oh,
18
okay.
in total in e-commerce.
Oh, okay, an ecom total. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember watching some of your videos, like on getting started when I was trying to learn how to optimize search term report or analyze search term reports for like PPC optimization, and
Yeah.
like I think that was back in your PPC scope days.
Yeah. Yeah. PPC Scope, and then followed by Sponsor Products Academy, and then Canopy Management, and then exiting all of those to go back into the software side of the house. So yeah, it's been a ride for sure.
Nice, nice. So yeah, I mean, just a ton of experience all around in Amazon and e-com space when it comes to PPC data, what drives results. Now, today our main topic of discussion is ranking. So when you look at how Amazon ranking has evolved today, like what's the biggest change you've seen that maybe most sellers are maybe missing, or maybe they should have a better understanding of?
I don't necessarily agree. I mean, so there's a lot of discussion. There's a lot of, I don't want to necessarily label it as hype, but I will say an excessive amount of attention on anytime Amazon rolls out any new change, any new technology. That includes things like Rufus and Cosmos and any other features that it rolls out. And those kind of changes provide an opportunity for people with following, with authority, to go out and say like, oh, the sky is falling, and I'm the only one with the magic sauce of, how to get around this, and you need to worry about it now because your whole world's going to come crashing down. And the reality is that while those changes have occurred or are still occurring and will come, they're not as drastic as everybody's, as I shouldn't say everybody, as some people have purported them to be. So
Mhm.
we look at it from a standpoint of, we're hyper focused in on the A9 algorithm, how it ranks, how it sorts products, how it ranks products. Now, there's no one thing out there that there's no one magic bullet. In other words, A9 search is not the same as being shown up off Amazon, in Google search, in TikTok, whatever. It's not the same as be showing up in the language models in a chat GPT. It's like, oh, hey, here's my product in chat GPT. It's not the same as even showing up in line in a Rufus question. It's like, oh, here's a suggested product. There's multiple places where a brand can have their product brought forward and shown to their target audience. And there's nothing wrong with going after every single one of those. Just don't do it all at the same time. Otherwise, you're going to exhaust yourself. And don't think that somebody else can take on everything and do well at all of those things. It's going to be a case of everybody's going to have their specialty. So pick your battles. Our battle that we chose to pick was specifically the A9 search rank. And we observe millions of data points for every single product niche so that we can see the changes that occur and how it's on the outside, how the ranking changes and what the algorithm is preferring and what it responds to. And so because of that, my perception of ranking on Amazon hasn't changed. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff being thrown around, a lot of discussions and noise and everything, new technologies rolling out, but just observing how do you rank well in organic search. We just needed more data. We just needed more detail to be able to get past the common advice, the too broad advice that I've even given over the years, and that is things like run PPC on long tail keywords and you'll just magically rank. Or once if you do some kind of a giveaway promotion, then you'll jump up to page one and you'll magically stick because now you belong there for some reason. Or the only reason, or just optimize your product listing and you'll win, against high volume search terms, right? And of course, then there's plenty of excuses on this, like, oh, well, I've got a bunch of Chinese sellers that came in and they're undercutting me, so I can't compete against them because their pricing, they're always going to beat me on price. I understand why all those have some validity and they make for a good story and good advice, from anybody who's got authority and who's speaking to a listening, seller audience. But the reality is that we just needed more data, we just needed to be able to look at it much closer and much finer detail. And that's why we came up with a system we did so that we could have that precision in organic ranking on Amazon. And so that's obviously leaving a huge gap as far as like how we got there. But it's not that the world has changed. There's just different levels of visibility.
I guess with someone that's struggling with ranking right now, I mean, which of those drivers or what should they try to focus in on first? Or is there a few things maybe?
Well, yeah, so absolutely. So every single product niche is treated somewhat differently by A9 when it comes to organic ranking. The reasons for this is you could have a commodity product, you're selling paper towels, for instance, and the primary driver in a commodity like paper towels is going to be maybe brand recognition, but more importantly to A9 is going to be price, right? Where the cheapest the cheapest per unit is probably going to drive the sales, is probably going to get the most number of units sold, and that's going to drive the actual ranking response that A9 gives it. The opposite side of that is you go into something like luxury watches, for instance, expensive men's watches, let's say. Price is not the driver at all. In fact, it doesn't even show up in the top 15 drivers when it comes to, we analyze for an entire product niche, as in the entire product niche. We analyze over 100 different levers or search rank factors, what we call them, that influence A9. And there's some common ones that bubble up, and I'll explain what those are. There's some common ones that bubble up that we see most frequently, but just understand is that each product niche is going to have its own flavor to it, its own emphasis, and more importantly, it's going to have its own weight, even on those things that we typically see, like title, for instance, title, content relevance, title SEO, relevance to the search terms that you're going after. In one product niche, title may have a 10% impact on A9. And way over here on the opposite side of the spectrum, a title could have 35, 40% impact on A9. And there's reasons for that as well that make sense once you actually understand how Amazon is weighting different, how A9 specifically is weighting different search rank factors like title, like price, like ratings, bullet points, content, how many units are sold today versus this month versus this year. There's, like I said, there's over 100 different things that we look at. The most common one, if you're not using a system like DeepM, where I would start is making sure, like the absolute number one thing, if I were to only give one piece of advice on this, is for a brand to go in and identify in their brand analytics, in their search query performance reports for each ASIN that they have, is to identify which search terms does their conversion rate have. First of all, which search terms have enough runway. In other words, you can see how many units that are being sold on a daily, weekly, monthly basis of that kind of product that are being sold on that search term. And let's say that there's enough, and maybe that's, well, I need at least 100 units that are sold in this product niche across all competitors in order for me to consider this, for me to go after this search term. The second piece on that is understanding where you have an advantage when it comes to conversion rate. You can go into other details as far as price advantage, click-through rate, that kind of stuff. And those all have secondary, tertiary value. But most importantly is you can calculate your conversion rate for your ASIN on each specific search term. And what you're looking for is, where do I have a reasonable advantage where my relative conversion rate is, right? My conversion rate is relatively higher than my average top competitor on that same search term, so that I know that if I throw a bunch of money and promotion and time and effort behind it, it's actually going to pay off because I'm not just losing money. I'm not in a disadvantage. And way too many times I see brands that follow the methodology that keyword research tell them to do, and that is focus in on optimize on the top searched terms. Those are the ones that are most popular. Those are the ones that are most likely to deliver, sales for you. In concept, that works. But in execution, it doesn't, because ultimately each product and each brand is going to have a different resonance with their target audience. They're not going to convert as well. They're not going to get to click-through rate as well. They're not going to have their images and their title and their bullet points and everything dialed in to that creates, their offering of their product listing just doesn't quite hit their target audience as well as they think. But what they need to do is they need to say, look, I still have the same target audience, but I'm going to slice it down to the specific segment of my target audience that are using these 5 to 10 search terms where I am at least equal, if not higher, in conversion rate on that search term, according to brand analytics. And I'm going to focus my advertising. I'm going to focus my title. I'm going to focus my bullet points, my content in general, my images into those search terms where I have a competitive advantage when it comes to conversion rate. So if there's absolutely nothing else that I would do, is pick your battle by looking at the search terms where your product is not at a disadvantage, doesn't have a negative difference as far as conversion rate, where ideally you've got a positive conversion rate difference with your average competitor. And that may not be a high volume search term. It may not be a long tail search term like a lot of people think it should be. It simply just means is that your product, for whatever reason, converts better than your average competitor. Those are the ones you lean into. And each product probably has a slightly different profile, different list.
Okay. Yeah, I've also, been researching more, and I had a recent conversation about AMC, Amazon Marketing Cloud, and
Yeah.
being able to use that data from there to actually see what's really working for your brand specifically versus, the general broad approach of just looking at, okay, here are the best search terms, long and short, for my product. Let me just go after those. You can focus in on what's actually working for your brand. And it's actually a little bit liberating in a way, because now you're not competing with anybody else. You're just really trying to figure out what's working specifically for you, not anyone
Yeah.
else. Do you kind of like harness that data, like AMC? Do you work that into your system in a
You
way?
know, I mean, ultimately, there's always more data points. You know, I want 100 times what we have now, and we have way more than anybody else is collecting. So, other than Amazon, I suppose.
Yeah.
Um, because we've got much bigger plans for DeepM, not just Amazon. And so
Okay.
it's one of those where yes, any time we can get a hold of additional um, audience targeting data, any kind of demographic, psychographic, um, all the key metrics as far as like proximity of inventory to from warehouse to consumer, time of day, weather, regional terminology, trending terminology, semantic equivalent words, all that kind of stuff comes into play. And it's not simply just throwing it into a spreadsheet because it wouldn't fit, but um, really understanding what it is that A9 absolutely wants and then focusing in on that. And even if you don't have all the data that we have in order to figure out exactly what A9 wants for your specific product niche, you can still go in and do a pretty good job, do a better job than most of your competitors are doing in focusing the lens into, okay, what is actually working for me?
Hmm.
Because you're going to see that reflected in how expensive your PPC is, how well any kind of a promotion, if you do like a search, find, buy, giveaway promotion, which can be done correctly. There's services out there that do that well, where you can give away a number of units in a short amount of time and you can jump all the way up to page one. But if you haven't optimized your other search rank factors, if you haven't focused in on where you have a competitive advantage with things like conversion rate, you're going to slide, you don't belong there. You're going to slide right back down again. And so
Okay.
the more, the worse you're competing at the search term level for conversion rate and click through rates, the more resistance you're going to have in ranking your products for a for a cluster of search terms, which is ultimately what you want. You don't want to just rank for one search term. You want to rank for 20, but
Right.
that 20 may be in 4 or 5 different search term clusters that are very similar. And you've got to figure out, where do I focus right now? Because most brands, they've got plenty of products. It doesn't have to be their hero product. They're not really concerned about their hero products. They want to protect their hero products. And then I don't want to change anything. But then they have a whole rest of their catalog where it's like, yeah, we're not going to reorder that one because it's a dud. Is it a dud? Or did it just not see visibility? So there's always a chance, we can always leverage more data. If somebody has access to brand analytics, definitely. If they've got access to Product Opportunity Explorer, that's a good one. If they have access to AMC, absolutely, take a look at it. The same kind of thing with uh, day parting kind of data, time of day and that kind of stuff. It's like if you've got time to go after that, it's probably because you've already optimized to optimize your product listing to focus in on your specific target audience where you have an advantage. If you haven't done that foundational work, none of this other stuff is going to matter until until you have a good foundation.
Okay. So yeah, it really sounds like if someone's new or their brand's newer, uh, it may take a little bit of time of just maybe going broad at first to get data initially and
Yeah.
then dialing in after that. I mean, I guess and then
Yeah. If
a
you're
shortcut
launching,
would, yeah.
yeah, if you're launching into if you don't have access to a tool like DeepM, then and you're launching a new product, and you could be an established brand or not. If you're launching a new product into a niche that you're not familiar with, you've got to collect data. There's not really a good way around that. Um, you've got to do a certain amount of, probably PPC advertising and content testing and, A/B split testing. Um, there, if somebody is coming in saying like, oh, well, it's just a set it and forget it, I can just set it up one time, they're ultimately going to disappear from the platform. if that's the mentality. If they haven't, if they believe that they can set it up once, or they can hire somebody to create all their creative and then they just don't have to touch it afterwards, you're not going to see them a year from now. As soon as they run out of
Right.
inventory, because they're going to bleed out slowly. Um, and so it's those that are willing to put in the extra work. You're going to outpace all your competitors who have that set it and forget it type of mentality, that minimal, that's minimal efforts. Like I want the easy button. I want it done
Yeah.
for me. But if you rely entirely on that, you're going to get hurt. It's simply just because nobody should know your customer as well as you do. Which I
Right.
realize that works for some brands that understand their customer and talk to their customer on a regular basis, versus those who are like, well, it's like, well, the product research tools told me this is an opportunity. I don't have any clue who buys this, but I'm going to go ahead and source it. Yeah, you can make it work because you're filling a gap, in the supply and demand. But the brands that are going to win are the ones who really know how to laser focus in on their target audience, including slices of their target audience based off of the specific search terminology. Instead of 500 search terms, they focus in on the top 10 to 20 that are not by search volume, but what actually convert well for their own product. And a brand new product, they're not going to have that data. So yeah, there's going to be an expense, for a new product.
Right. Now it does sound like they could maybe shorten that time period of research if they do use something like DeepM to get that data initially. Could they
Yeah.
use that to help with a launch, for example?
Yeah, I mean, like, so the keyword research tools now, you get, the Helium 10 and the Jungle Scout and the Data Dive. These kind of keyword research tools primarily focus in on what are the search term, what are the keywords to go after, what are the search terms, what kind of search volume, how popular they are, what's the projected total sales and everything. And then they switch over to like, okay, how are you ranked compared to what's your relative search ranking against each of the search terms? And the concept that is usually put forward is, oh, well, you want to go after the larger search terms, the highest search volume search terms, and you want to stuff your title with a combination of multiple search terms, column clusters, column root keyword combinations, whatever the case is, anchors. Um, but you're still chasing the search volume that the keyword research tool has told you that you want. And the reality is that you don't have, especially on a new product or a young product, you don't have um, you don't have the authority, you don't have the social proof in your product in order to go after these mega terms where you're competing against 800-pound gorilla competitor brands that are very well established, that A9 is paying closer attention to because they've spent years dialing in some of these search rank factors. The difference that a tool like ours does is we don't simply just reverse engineer how A9 ranks, sorts products and what matters most and by how much, but we also measure every product in that niche, so all your competitor products for every single search term. And we can tell you precisely, it's like, okay, among your competitive set, you're 71, you're in the 71th percentile for optimization of your title on this search term. And therefore you're beating 71% of your core competitors, but there's more room to grow. And you know precisely exactly what that is. And every time you make a change, you see that change that go up or down. Or anytime a competitor changes something, you may see that number go up or down. And you have that early warning system or early opportunity radar that tells you like, hey, this little optimization is working. It's appealing more to A9. And I can, the end result, of course, is my search rank continues to climb and climb and climb. Um, so yeah, Sure, it's nice to have access to brand new technology that you know solves a unique problem, through brute force data. Um,
Yeah.
but not every brand is in a position to do that. Most brands are not in a position to do that, but yet they have the data at their fingertips. They're just not using it. They're not watching the right YouTube videos. They're
Yeah.
not exploring what data do they actually have in front of them already, and what is it telling them.
Right.
Um, there's a line that or a kind of a framework that I learned from Alex Hormozy. Um, and I don't know where if he created himself or he got it from somewhere else, but I want to be able to show you, have you stop doing what is not working, start doing what you should be doing, and then keep doing and keep doing and keep reinforcing what you need to keep doing in order to grow your business. The way that we translate that here is there are things that you're doing right now that are hurting, that are causing harm to your ability to rank on Amazon for certain search terms. There are things that you're already doing well that need to be reinforced. You're just not aware of it. And there are gaps in the marketplace where your competitors have not just rank, maybe they're not as well ranked or they have certain weakness in ranking, but they've got multiple search rank factors that A9 looks at where they're weak on each of those that you could easily be strong on just through a little bit of optimization, and you could exploit their vulnerability to your own advantage. And that sounds maybe a little harsh, but the reality is this is a system of money, and there's competition, and you're already getting killed. Otherwise, you wouldn't be even listening to this discussion if you weren't trying to find the solution to pain that you have.
Right. Right. Yeah, I guess to someone listening that's trying to figure out that solution, or maybe they're ready to start testing things, like if they do figure out kind of what levers to pull in their specific niche, like when it comes to trying to look at the data and see what's working, like what does it look like when they're trying to make certain changes, and how long should they test a certain change before trying something else? A little more like practical stuff,
Yeah.
like how should they go about it,
From a general term, or from a general position on this, is you want to try to stick with something probably for a month. Happens to be, about what Amazon wants from an A/B split testing in Amazon experience. They want at least 3 or 4 weeks before they show you the data because they want enough chance to be able to show it. Now, not everybody can run, certainly not a brand new product. They can't run Amazon experiments and do A/B testing on their image or their title, bullet points, whatever the case is. Title, it would be where I would start, uh, because they just don't have enough sessions on there. But for those that can, they should test subtle changes, not major change, not like I'm going to completely rewrite my entire title. Do subtle changes. And that sometimes that means in the world of Amazon, we look at it from a precision standpoint of, does this one word belong in the title? Does that one word belong um, in a specific part of the title, front or back, middle? Does that one word need to be singular or plural? Does that one word have a semantic exchange or a synonym that has, where you can reinforce the, imagery with the customer while at the same time appeasing A9 as far as relevance? Does that one word need to be in front of or behind some other word? Well, that's the kind of level that we're dealing with as far as,
Yeah.
precision goes. Um, it's not, if you were to oversimplify this, somebody who's been selling on Amazon for enough years will hear this discussion and maybe like, well, it sounds to me like all you're doing is just like test a bunch of different things and see what improves your rank. Well, yeah, duh. Um, it's a matter of, if you don't have the tools, then it goes back to what I said early on, and that was, if you have enough data, if you have a good quarter of data or better, then the search query performance report, you really need to dig into that, and you really need to learn to understand that. Even if that means uploading that file into ChatGPT and say, like, what am I looking at here? Tell me what insights I can find here. What are the, you know, tell me detail about this specific search term, and let it do the job. Like, don't overthink it if you don't like spreadsheets. um, I would probably, once I understand what search terminology that I seem to have a conversion rate advantage on, there's other things like click-through rate and price and that kind of stuff that I would probably also look at as well, but conversion rate first. I would start some A/B split testing, or try to modify my title slightly in order to line up closer. If I'm missing a word, for instance, most likely I'm already hitting most of those words as it is. But if I'm missing a word, I want to make sure I integrate that. It's not, in most cases, you don't need to have full phrases of the search terms. You don't need to have both singular and plural. It's not like that. You can mingle them together. You can mix 4 or 5 similar search terms, search phrases into one line of words that ultimately, the words being in the title are going to resonate with A9 from a ranking standpoint for relevance. So your job then is, the other half of this is, you've got to talk to your target audience. You got to talk to that potential buyer. And, that's when you start putting in things like, well, is it easily readable by the human, or is it just a bunch of words stuffed together? Am I, in the first 80 characters, did I set the hook? Did I create something interesting in the first 80 characters by the words I used in order to grab shoppers' attention, especially if you have any kind of a differentiation, right, from your competitors? um, and then the first place that I would invest money is use something like a product pinion and do some image split testing with your target audience. It's not the same necessarily as Amazon experiments from a real world conversion standpoint, but products like Product Pinion have gotten really good at being able to tease out the answers that then seem to resonate when you actually put it into play in your product listing on Amazon. A lot of times it actually works out pretty well. So that helps you to dial in your images. It's so easy for me to rabbit hole on so many other exceptions and considerations and everything. Like, I could be here for the next 3 hours, but if I were to really simplify it, search query performance, which search terms do I convert as well or better than my average competitor? And if anybody needs the formula as far as like what that is, there's plenty of people who have talked about it. You can certainly, somebody could reach out to me and I can just, it's like, yeah, this is the calculation. But, and then focusing your content on those search terms and the words in those search terms throughout your content. Title's going to have the biggest impact. Bullet points probably would be the second biggest impact. Funny enough, specifications, like where it was made, the dimensions, materials, that kind of stuff. You can actually put words in there, and Amazon often listens to that as well. It may only, catch, 1% weight on the ANN algorithm, but if you can move the needle by 1%, why not? It's usually a collection of like, oh, I need to stack these things. So it's, review ratings. Your relative review rating is interesting because most of us know, like, if you get down below 4.0, that's kind of danger zone, right? There's a line right at 4.2 stars, where you go from you lose that half star, which It has a visual impact.
Yep.
Um, but a lot of us also, as brand owners, we can say it's like, oh, I've got a 4.6 rating. It's like my rating. I don't need to improve my rating, but everything is relative to what your competition is doing. Because all of your competition, all your top competitors are 4.7.
Uh-huh.
You don't look, you don't look that good. You don't look that good to A9 because your relative strength, your relative velocity is not up to par with your nearby competitors. And so that's
Right.
that's mostly what we focus on is what is your relative position so that you can identify where you're strong and where you're weak. Um, I know I keep on wanting to jump back into my system here, but for the average person, yeah, search query performance, focus your content, start doing a little bit of split testing if you can already using Amazon experiments. And then the first place I would invest money is probably something like a product opinion to do image testing. And a lot of these tools, I think Product Opinion has this or is building this in, is the ability to use AI to generate images. You don't have to hire a professional photographer. At some point, you probably want to hire a professional photographer because they're going to have a design eye that maybe you don't have. And telling
Right.
AI with a bad design eye is going to, you're going to get okay results. The results you get from AI image generators is fantastic these days. um, but start there. Figure out what resonates and what hooks the attention of the audience. Are you getting higher click-through rates? It all translates into the key metrics. Your click-through rate increases, your conversion rate increases, your unit velocity, or the number of units that you're selling each day, each week, each month continues to increase and increase and increase. And then your organic rank responds to all of these signals coming in.
Right. And again, like a lot of these things that you mentioned, as far as, again, it can be niche specific on maybe which things maybe you need to focus in on. So you need to figure
Yep.
out maybe which things are more heavily weighted for your niche, what kind of drives results more for your specific niche. And then, yeah, ChatGPT, image generation, or just ChatGPT using, or other AI models out there too, to analyze data. That's going to be, you can leverage these things now. You don't have to just do it all within spreadsheets,
Yeah.
like you mentioned. These can
Don't
help.
put yourself into
help.
pain trying to analyze a spreadsheet if you're not a spreadsheet person. Like I can live in
Yeah,
spreadsheets all day long, but I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd like that. So I can do that kind of stuff. But I certainly recognize that there's some days when I will just be like, man, I'm looking at too much here. Let me
right,
upload it to ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or whatever the case is. And, whoever it can analyze an uploaded, spreadsheet or PDF or whatever the case is, and just start asking. It's like, okay, if this is me, if this is my data, this is the search terms I'm trying to go after, where am I good and where am I bad?
mhm, yep,
Like what are the variances that I need to stay away from this one where my conversion rate sucks compared to my competitors, lean into as in don't even advertise on those or advertise at a very cheap rate if you're going to continue to advertise. Don't keep trying to chase a high volume search term just because a keyword research tool said, hey, here's what's popular.
right, right. But I
Too
guess,
expensive.
right. And so for, you did mention a while back, and because we're coming near the end here, you did mention that maybe DeepM, for example, might not be a great fit for everyone. I guess who is it suited for, or who should maybe, if they are interested in potentially using DeepM, like who is that better suited for?
Yeah, I mean, as of this date, we're still in beta, and so we are focused specifically on Amazon US marketplace, 3P product sellers. Ideal fit is those who have been selling for at least a year and probably are doing at least, $20,000 a month in sales. Um, our success rate in growing organic sales on those kind of brands, um, averages, in the 200 to 400% lift over, a period of, 2 to 3 months in organic sales. Um, and sometimes when we've gone outside of our sweet spot where we took took on a brand that had too many SKUs, had 40,000 SKUs, then some of our numbers don't quite line up. Sometimes if we go too small, where it's like, oh, I've only got, essentially it's one product and then like a couple of variations, there's usually not enough data for us to, I mean, yes, we can solve problems, we can help them grow, but it's not going to have that, shock and awe kind of growth that we expect, that we would like to, be able to get. So on those instances, you might get down to, 20% growth. Like, I mean, for a small brand, 20% growth is, it's hardly going to move the needle. It's not going to, you're not going to be able to afford being able to use competitive intelligence software like ours. But there's other cases, where you say like, oh, this one search term grew organic sales by 1,800%, so you can always play the numbers, and create magic, statistically. But, we have some great success stories and that kind of stuff. But right now, yeah, Amazon US, a third-party seller with Seller Central access, Vendor Central only if they have the upgraded Vendor Central that gives them access to things like brand analytics. We are rolling out our app here next month to our internal beta testers, and then from there, that'll give us the foundation to expand out to the other Amazon marketplaces throughout the world, and then also start going into the other channels, that because our whole deep learning model and data collection method works. It's not specific to Amazon, so it'll work on any e-commerce marketplace. So, your Walmart, your TikTok Shop, Target, Mercado Libre, Etsy, etc. And so that is a point that I'm really excited about, because we do see where brands experience year-over-year loss in sales on Amazon, and they think they're doing something wrong and they don't know why. Right. That's one of the biggest things, is like, we can tell you exactly how to rank number one for any non-branded search term. It may not make sense to do that, but at least you'll know exactly what it would take in order to do that. And so then obviously pick your battles as far as where you want to grow economically, where it's feasible. But a lot of brands, they see year-over-year shrink in certain search terms or in certain, product categories, and they don't realize that it's like, oh, 15% of their audience has shifted over to TikTok Shop. And so when we're fully connected to all these other marketplaces, we'll have that visibility of where is the customer drifting around. And then beyond that, then we'll have our listening ears out for media mentions and, social media conversations and just kind of sentiment around product groups and everything. So that's all part of our roadmap, and it's big and grand, and sometimes some days it's exhausting, but I absolutely love doing it every morning. Yeah. Gets me up.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I guess, yeah, this has been incredibly valuable. Like you said, you could go down rabbit holes on various aspects all day, probably. Yeah, I definitely highly recommend people review this. And yeah, if they, are interested in reaching out, how can they get in contact with you and maybe learn more about the beta or the tool release coming out soon? Anything like
Yeah,
that?
no, absolutely. I mean, they can certainly, we have a contact form out on our website at DeepM, so DeepM.ai. There's like a, essentially sign up for a demo, and that'll just put you in contact with us. It's not anything fancy. And then you can kind of see, we can actually just do an intro call, and we suck as far as sales pitch. It's pretty obvious for everybody who actually sees what it's doing. They're like, oh, well, okay, now I get it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's new, it's different, it's kind of a new concept, but yeah, it's definitely worth taking a look at. Um, and I'm always looking, for, there's always things as far as like, service partnerships and agencies and that kind of stuff that we work with already, that help. It's not all just brands, but there's a lot of agencies who see that too. It's like, well, man, I can blow up all my client sales, using this system. And I'm like, why wouldn't I, So, yeah, I'm also typically available on LinkedIn, Brian R. Johnson, on LinkedIn. Yeah. Great to, glad to field any questions.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll leave all that contact info down below in the description of the video for anyone interested. And again, incredibly Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. And yeah, talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.